I've started this letter 4 times. The first 3 times I got as far as Dear Claire before I stopped, because this isn't really for Claire. I think I've been writing it for myself. Or maybe for Dad. Or maybe just to put something down somewhere that doesn't disappear when I stop thinking about it. So, here it is, honest. The night before the funeral, I ironed a blouse I didn't end up wearing. I stood in the kitchen at 11:15 with the iron hissing, and I thought about what my father smelled like. Not cologne, he never wore cologne after his 40s. Just wool and something faintly medicinal. And underneath all of it, something warm I could never name. I thought about that smell for a long time. The blouse got too hot. I set down the iron and I sat at the table, and I just stayed there for a while, not crying, not thinking in any organized way, just being a person whose father had died. That was grief, I think. The real kind, not the kind you perform for a room. Claire and I were never enemies. I want to say that clearly because it matters. We were parallel. 2 daughters raised in the same house by the same 2 people, and yet we somehow ended up orbiting different versions of our father. Hers was the one who coached her soccer team, who slow danced with her at her wedding, who called her name first in every group photo. Mine was quieter. Mine called on Tuesday evenings after the news, when the house was settled and he had nothing to sell and nowhere to be. He'd ask about my kids by name, in order, oldest to youngest. Marcus, then Lily, then the baby, Evan. And he'd remember what I told him the week before. He'd say, did Marcus end up making the team? Like he'd been sitting with the question all week. I think maybe he had been. I never told Claire about the Tuesday calls. Not because I was hiding them. Just because they felt like something he was protecting. Something small and sustained and private. The way some people keep a plant in a room no one else uses. She said it before the pastor had even finished settling the room. We were standing near the back, guests still finding their seats. Flowers arranged in the way funeral flowers always are, too symmetrical, too heavy. Claire leaned close, her voice was low and almost kind. That's the part I keep returning to. Almost kind, he loved you, obviously, but not the same way. She said it, the way people say things they have been holding for years. Like a favor, like she was finally releasing me from some long misunderstanding, freeing me from a hope I'd been carrying without knowing it. I nodded. Slowly. I didn't say anything, I thought about the notebook. After Dad passed, while we were sorting through his desk, the one in the small room he called his office, though he mostly just sat in there reading, I found a notebook with a green cover, the cheap kind, with the marbled pattern. His handwriting inside, which in his last years had gotten slower, more deliberate. My name on the first page. My children's names below it, and beside each one, small things. Marcus wants to study marine biology, shy around adults but not shy around animals. Lily laughs before the punchline, gets that from her mother. Evan still sleeps with the blue blanket. Don't mention it, or he gets embarrassed things I had told him. On Tuesdays, when the house was settled, he had written them down because he was afraid of forgetting. I stood in that office for a long time holding the notebook. Then I put it in my bag and I didn't show it to anyone, not because I was hiding it, but because it was mine. It had been written for me. That felt important to honor. There was also the drawing. When they handed me his personal effects at the hospital, his watch, his wallet, his phone, I opened the wallet out of habit, the way you do, and inside, folded into quarters and soft at the edges from years of being carried, was a drawing Evan had made him. Age 5, a house with too many windows and a sun in both corners, my father's name spelled wrong in crayon across the bottom. Grandpa Jim, he had carried it for 3 years. The pastor asked if anyone would like to speak. I was already standing, not dramatically. I didn't plan it and I didn't rehearse it. I just found myself upright, and then I was walking toward the front of the room, and people moved slightly the way people do when something unexpected but not unwelcome is happening. I talked about my father the way only I could, not the version of him that existed in photographs or speeches. The real one, unheroic, imperfect, loving in ways he was sometimes too private to announce. I talked about how he apologized badly, always too late, always a little sideways, but how he kept trying, which I had come to understand as its own kind of language. I talked about the notebook. I held it up. I talked about the drawing he had carried in his wallet until the day he died. I talked about Tuesday nights. The room changed, not loudly. It just shifted. Something settled into it that hadn't been there before. I didn't look at Claire, not to avoid her. I just didn't need to. She didn't speak to me after the service, not that week, not the one following. The distance that opened between us wasn't something I created, and it wasn't something I wanted. It was just truth, finally, standing in the space where something else used to be. I don't know what she's sitting with. I hope it's not only pain, but I can't carry that for her. I've placed this letter in the same drawer as Dad's notebook. That felt right. I don't know why, but it did. I'm not angry at Claire. I'm not waiting for anything. I just know now, not as something I have to argue or prove, but as something I simply quietly, fully know, that my father loved me. In his own private, sustained Tuesday evening way. He wrote it down so he wouldn't forget it. That's enough. That's more than enough.